Okay, in this video I'm going to add Microsoft Application Insights into a .NET Core application. It's a very simple process. Um, Also adding it to the older .NET Framework applications is pretty much about as simple. It's really just about adding a NuGet package, and it makes a few updates to some app setting JSON files and embed some code into your layout Razor page. The instructions are in this documentation on Microsoft. I'll include this URL in the video. I'm just going to go ahead and do it without going through the instructions because it's simple and I've done it numerous times. So what I'm going to start out with is a little demo program to work with. It's just a real simple .NET Core MVC application that I scaffolded out really fast. It uses a in-memory database just for ease of use, and just a few things to note on the when it goes to the contact page. It is going to it's going to run this sleep 5,000 milliseconds, so it's going to wait for 5 seconds. That's going to be so we can kind of mimic what a slow responding web page would look like. In the controller for adding an employee, I just kind of put in some code to simulate an error. If the person's first name is actually error, it's just going to throw an exception. Again, this will help add some failures into application insights, so there's some interesting stuff to look at and actually demo some of the features that come with Microsoft Application Insights. So just briefly, I'm going to run the application just so give a quick demo of what it looks like. It's just a simple standard MVC .NET Core template. I think I'm going to have to re-register, so because it uses an in-memory database, so that's probably not going to work. So I'm registered, and it has the typical home, about. The contact does that sleep for 5 seconds to kind of simulate what a slow page would be like. The employee data, really simple little form. And then to simulate that error, I can put in error as the name, and then what it'll do is it'll actually throw an error. So that's the application. So now let's add Microsoft Application Insights to it. Now, Application Insights stores the data or the data points in an application service inside of Microsoft Azure. And I have in my Azure portal, in my Azure account, I've created a resource group, which resource groups are just ways to organize services in Azure. Really, it's nice because when I'm done with my demo stuff, I delete the resource group and everything in it gets wiped out. So it's easy cleanup. So this is where I'm going to create my Application Insights resource. This is where it's going to go. To create it is really easy. It's basically a one-step little process. It's integrated into Visual Studio. and it's easy to do. So you really just right click on connected services. I want to add actually right click on the project, add. I want to add application insights telemetry. And it's going to kind of give you this wizard. It's really pretty easy. I've already got my Visual Studio linked to my Azure account, my subscription. I want to use that resource I created, which is not showing up. Where is it? Okay, we'll just let it create. It'll create one for you. And there is a way, the pricing of this, it's basically free if you set up a cap on, you get 1 gigabyte of data points a month. After that, it's, I mean, it's pretty cheap. The pricing's here. I mean, for the amount of data that you get, it's well worth it for a production level application, because it really lets you get a deep dive into your application of what's slow, what's breaking, and just various statistics about your application. So I'm going to register, and it's going to do basically add a NuGet package. It's going to make some updates in my app settings JSON file and in my layout. This doesn't usually take very long, so it should be done here, and it is. So basically the changes where it put in the instrumentation API key, and this is for tracks not only the server side statistics and telemetry information, it also stores client side data that's coming from the browser crashes, the types of browsers used, other client statistics, but it does that just by putting in this inject JavaScript snippet for that. So I can now run this, and it's going to start tracking that telemetry information. It's going to build and restart here. I'm going to have to log out because I'm sure it's not going to let me. With that in-memory database, it really clears it out every time you stop and start the application. So again, it's just I'm going through here, I'm clicking on contact, that has that 5-second delay. I'll put some data in here. And then I'll put in a error to simulate a crash. And it crashed. So it's running locally, but it's actually sending that data to that application insights in Azure. And Visual Studio has integration in with that where you can actually view some of your application insights data. Probably the easiest, the best way I think to view it is to just go out on the portal. Now if I go back to my resource groups, there should be a new one. Nope, that's not it. Okay, so this is the resource group it created. This is the, let me get a little bit more screen real estate. Here's the application insights, and it has a real wealth of information. It probably takes about a day before you really get a lot of good relevant information, but it's already started tracking. One thing I did forget to do, when it adds application insights, it adds it as a NuGet package, and you usually need to update that to get all the latest features of application insights. I should have did that right when I hooked it up. And I'm going to start it up again. I think what I might do, it'll make it easier to play with here. I'm just going to deploy this website out to the cloud. I can do it for free. It doesn't cost anything. It's really easy. It's about as easy as adding insights. You just right click on your project, publish. I'm going to do a new app service, which is basically a platform as a service. It basically runs your application. It's like an IIS process is what it amounts to. And I'm just going to call this Sheely Insights. Why not? And I'm going to put it in that same group. So in this F1 is the free plan. It's more of a low end, low performance, but it's great for development and test work. So it's now going to provision that resource. It's going to build a release build of my project, and it's going to deploy it out to Azure. And it really only takes a couple minutes. But it'll make it easier to show some of this stuff in application insights with it actually deployed instead of me running it locally. So it was provisioned, and now it's building, and then it's going to push the application out to Azure, out on the internet. And when it's done, it'll actually open a browser with it pointed to the site. May take a few more seconds here for it to spin up and start running. And basically this is the same application. This is the privacy default part of the new .NET Core template, except, yeah, whatever. Again, I'm going to register. I will I guess it's not going to give me a so I'm registered. I guess I don't really need to save it. So again, my home about page, contact, that'll take about 5 seconds. And employee data, let's add a few rows. And then this. Now this is in production, and it uses a production configuration, and kind of like the older .NET framework, you're not going to see really any revealing information. It's just going to give you this. You can of course have custom error pages, but this basically for security doesn't give you any information about the application. But now that I've gone through and ran some of this, let's go back to the application insights. And what you're going to start seeing are these stats coming in, like failures. That's from where I put in that error that errored out. Other things like average server response time. It's probably going to be kind of high since it just freshly deployed. Requests, availability. I'm going to basically go through the ones I usually look at. I mean, there's a lot of stats and metrics in here that, and it's constantly being updated and things are being added, but I'm going to go through the ones that I usually look at. Application map is kind of cool. It's going to give you kind of a visual of the hierarchy of your application. Like this is the application. It's probably got 2 listed here because it got a little confused because I was running it locally and now it's out on the cloud. And after about a day, that'll all clear out. And then smart detections, just it kind of uses kind of AI scanning to find any possible issues that may need to be resolved, kind of a proactive checking. The live metrics stream is probably one of the neatest features. It actually shows you real-time stats of your website. Like right now, I'm not hitting it at all, but if I go into here and I just start refreshing this a bunch of times, start clicking around, or actually that contact page will take about 5 seconds, but when I flip back here, I'm now going to start seeing stats come in like 5 seconds. That's where that page wait, normally the response time was almost instant. This is basically measuring the rate of requests per second, the duration average per second, request failures. You may have failures off and on. The main thing you don't want to see is a sustained rate of failure. Dependencies, that's basically database file system, other web services. Since this is an in-memory database, there's really no dependencies at all, and it will never register anything. And then just some overall health metrics. This is actually the Azure server that it's on. This is kind of a nice thing to just have constantly on a screen for like maybe operations or people to monitor. And you can, whereas you can go full screen with this. Where the heck is it? I think you can just hit F11. Well, that's in the browser, but there's... Well, anyway. So that is that. Metrics, I don't use this much, but you can set up all kinds of charts based off, you know, typical stats like average page response time, browser response time, protocols, failures. I mean, you can set up all kinds of stuff. Availability basically tells you the availability of your website, and what happens is you can set up, or it automatically will do it, but you can modify it. But I think it's every 5 minutes, your site will be pinged from the 5 different Azure regions inside the United States, and if I think if two of them can't get through, or the response time is above a certain threshold, it considers that an availability failure. And again, a lot of these stats aren't going to really look or show anything until it's been up for about a day. But it's the availability of your website. Failures is a popular item I go into. I always, for like fixing a website and tuning a website, I usually go in and fix all the failures first, or at least the failures that happen a lot, and then I'll look at performance. So I mean, obviously you want to fix the errors, you don't want to have errors, but then once you get past that, then you can start looking at performance, things that work but don't work as well as they should, or are slow. And this helps, is a tool that helps identify those problem areas in your application. Like that hard-coded error that I put in, this is tracking that failure. It's giving me the counts, and you can drill down and get more information. It expands the blades out and gives you more information about it. Like I can drill into there and it's gonna list those errors, and you can keep drilling down and it'll give you exception information. It gives you the controller, the URL. Well, that'd be the controller and the action, the URL, response time. This actually was from when I was running it locally because it was in the development mode. On Azure, it's running in production. So yeah, like that's from when I ran it on Azure. The other one was when I was running it locally. And it gives you stack trace information. I mean, there's tons of information that helps you diagnose problems. The next one's performance. So I usually target errors first, and then I go into performance. I look at things that, you know, like some of these are 36, 76, 104 milliseconds. I don't even worry about that because that's basically instantaneous. The human blink of an eye is about 200 to 400 milliseconds, so these are virtually instantaneous. But that one page, my contact page, where I put in that 5-second delay, this shows up as something you would obviously want to look at. 5 seconds is ridiculous and would have to be addressed, but this has given me those insights into this would be something I'd obviously want to address. This index page, probably, I mean, again, these are all well perfect. It's just this one's the one that stands out. This is, again, I can drill down and get more information. It's kind of like the failures. You get quite a bit of information. You can find out other items for, or other actions that user performed. You can find the telemetry before and after that event, so maybe there was something slow in the server and it's not really a problem. I mean, there's lots of rich information in here. I went out too far. So that's failures, performance. Servers really doesn't matter here because I'm in Azure, and Azure just works. I mean, there's nothing really. Now, if you were on-prem, this would be helpful because it would show you the servers you're running on and you get some useful information there. Browser, this is giving you information about the client side. You're looking at it from the browser side of the application. I shouldn't have any failures in the browser because it's I haven't really coded anything. It's just the standard template stuff, so there's no problems there. I can see performance. from the browser side, and that would include things like how long it took to pull the data down, to render the page. There's really a lot of stats in here, and I can just pick one. It's telling me I was using Chrome, what version, United States, Kansas, Topeka, duration. I mean, there's a lot of information available. And again, with the browser side, I concentrate on failures first and then performance. Never really did anything. The guides, I think this is just information about how Insights works. Workbooks, same thing. Usage, this is kind of where it gets more into like how your users are engaging with your website. And I shouldn't have hardly any users because it was just me playing around with this. And again, some of this data takes like a day or so before you really start getting valuable information. And you can export stuff, and there's all kinds of stuff you can do with this. And again, like every month it seems like they're adding new functionality. Sessions, again, those are just sessions coming in. Events, never really messed with that. Funnels, this is something new. I've never even messed with that. User flows are the same thing. I think this tracks, like, I have gone into here now I think about it. It was called something else before, but it's like it shows like the progression of how people are going through your website, and again, just tons of stats, and like if there was an error when they were going through here, it would show up. I haven't done much with this, but retention, I believe, is how many times they revisit your website. If they come back the second day, the third day, do they come to your site, visit once, and then never come back again? I believe is what these stats are. I haven't really messed with that much. Impact, I'm not even sure what this is. This is one of the newer functions I've never really messed with. But again, there's lots of stuff. You can actually export your stats into something else if you had some other product that you wanted to do. Probably one of the last things. This is where I was talking about the cap. When Visual Studio sets this up, it's going to put a cap on for you, and this is where you can. Actually, I guess it doesn't. You can cap it to where I can't remember the number, but you can basically take 1 gig, divide it into 30 days, and you put that daily cap, and it basically makes it free because you will never go over the 1 gigabyte of data. But then again, it's not much cost for the great benefit you're getting out of this, especially if you're running this on production systems. Probably the last thing I'm going to show is alerts. I use this when I set up an application. I always use alerts. This is a really great function because I can set alerts for like availability. If 2 out of those 5 regions can't hit my website, or the response time is down, or maybe errors exceed a certain level, I can actually have it email me an alert. It can actually send me an alert saying, some alert condition has happened. And it basically allows you to be proactive with your website and to get notifications when there's problems. I mean, there is all kinds of different metrics you can set for alerts. What I usually set is availability, and then average page server response time, and errors. If it starts getting a sustained rate of errors, I want an alert. If the page response time is starting to hit like 3 seconds, 2 seconds, or higher, I want to know. And it's not, it has to be that, it has to sustain that for a certain level. It's not like any one page that takes 5 seconds to load triggers an alert. It's really smart about that alert process. So I always set usually those three things up: availability, page response time, and error rate. And that correlates with that live metric stream, which probably is going to be nothing because I haven't done anything on this website. So let me access it a little bit, and we'll put an error in there. Oops, error. So if I go over here, there's my error. There's my contact. I just know because I put that 5-second delay in there. That's from my contact page, but really the rest of this stuff is like sub-second. Actually, when this scrolls off, it will readjust the metrics to make more sense with the data points, which once it scrolls off here, you'll see what I mean. Almost there. So yeah, like these pages are less than 20 seconds. The 40, I mean, this is like instantaneous. I mean, of course, this website does absolutely really nothing, but that's basically my demo of Application Insights. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to leave the URL for the documentation in the description below this video. And again, this is just a simple little application. You can test it out on any application. You can just create the starter template of an application and you can test it. But if for whatever reason you would like to start with an application like this, it's fairly simple, that has some stuff to trigger those events. I have my application out in GitHub, and you can clone it and toy around with it yourself. But if you have any questions, leave comments, or if you have any comments you want to leave, feel free. Thank you.